Here's another topic to be praying about as we pray about the fires in California, we pray about the incoming administration, and we've been praying for the hostage situation in Israel. Well, a hostage ceasefire deal has been reached, according to the president and reports, between Israel and Hamas, the negotiators in Qatar. Although reports out of Israel is that the prime minister and his war cabinet have not yet approved this deal. Now, the Israeli government is expected to meet at 11 a.m. local time on Thursday to approve this three-phase deal that the Israeli Defense Ministry and Israeli Defense Forces are already preparing to implement. So what's in the deal and what are the issues with it? Joining me now to discuss this is Frank Gaffney, president of the Institute for American Future and the host of Securing America program on the Real America's Voice Network under President Ronald Reagan. He acted as the Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Policy. Frank, thanks for joining us.
Well, it's my privilege, Tony. Thank you for having me.
So let's, before we get into give us the overview of this. I'm getting some signals out of Israel that this is not the best deal for Israel, and there's a lot yet to be uncovered.
I'm afraid I'm going to say it's a terrible deal for Israel, actually, Tony. I fear that it amounts to a victory for Hamas, if you could believe it, effectively surrendering the entirety of Gaza to the people who perpetrated this horrific attack on October 7th and has been at war with Israel prior to that, you know, from the inception of this terrorist organization, and will be until it is put out of business, which has been the purpose of Benjamin Netanyahu. Unfortunately, what we're told is that Bibi basically had his knees broken on the Sabbath, no less, by a man who has been given the role of a special Middle East envoy, I'm sorry to say, by President Trump, by the name of Stephen Witkoff. He's a well-to-do billionaire, financial guy, real estate guy out of New York. I'd be a little surprised if President Trump knew when he put him in this position that he had actually done a $600 million hotel deal with the nation of Qatar. It might have had something to do with the fact that Steve Whitaker said the other day that Qatar is doing God's work in these negotiations. I think he might have meant Allah's work, because what has been done, I think, is not in the service of Israel. Yes, there will be presumably a few hostages released in exchange for something on the order of 1,000 to 1,300 pedigreed jihadists
I think
who will be let out of Israeli jails.
I'm told the ratio is 50 to 1. For every hostage. There's 33 in the first phase of this deal, taking 6 weeks. And I'm a little puzzled by that, because I know when we had the Iranian hostage deal, it didn't take weeks to release the hostages. And President Biden said, this is my plan that I put forward last year. So whose plan is this? I mean, he claims it's his plan. And we know what the Biden administration has been doing all along.
Yeah, incredibly, I think it's in some ways worse than the plan that he put together back in, I think, May of last year, if I'm not mistaken. It's not Joe Biden put it together, but the apparatus around him, obviously. But what it does, Tony, is it essentially says that all of the progress that Israel has made to root out Hamas, to deprive it of resources, to close its infrastructure, notably those tunnels and so on, will essentially be undone, because they will be allowed to have the run of Gaza again, and they will, in fact, I think, have all kinds of resources pouring in to help them rebuild those tunnels, among other things.
Joe Biden said this ends the war. This would mean that this, after this first phase, again, I don't know why it takes 6 weeks to release 33 hostages. So once those are released,
well, some of them are dead, Tony. So it may be required, some logistics, but still, 6 weeks is ridiculous. You're right.
And so they're going to have to. IDF forces will have to, through a scheduled withdrawal from Gaza. In the meantime, Hamas is able to rearm, re-equip, and you're right, all that has been gained will have been lost.
Yes. And the fact that Biden is taking ownership of it is pretty telling. And the fact that this chap, Steve Witkoff, was an enabler of that. Tony Blinken the other day said Steve Witkoff has been very helpful. Indeed, he has. I think what he did was he took what Donald Trump meant as leverage on the Hamas terrorists, putting them on notice that if the hostages were not released, and I think he meant all of the hostages, not a fraction of them, all of the hostages released by the time he came to office, as he put it, forgive the French, all hell would break loose. Now, that was intended to be pressuring Hamas. Instead, Witkoff and the Biden team, of course, turned this into leverage on Bibi Netanyahu. And I am just sick at what I think has been done here. I hope that the president, Donald Trump, will think better of this as he learns more about what's been done with his help, inadvertently, I think.
Frank, we're up against a break here. Just one final question. This, given what the fragile coalition that Bibi Netanyahu has been able to put together there, and the strong right wing, if you will, of the Knesset of it in his coalition, this could cause his governing coalition to implode.
I think it could. The left has, of course, wanted his head on a pike for a long time, but I think there are a lot of people now on the right who feel that all of this is for naught, all of the war efforts, if this is allowed to go forward. And I'd just say, if people want to learn more about this, at victoryco.org, we have some information put together in a point paper, a briefing paper. It will help inform all of your listeners about why we need, I think, among other things, to have Steve Witkoff removed from this role as mediator or the Mideast special envoy. This is a man who may work for Qatar, but I don't honestly think he's worked effectively for Donald Trump or the interests of the United States, to say nothing of Israel.
All right, Frank Gaffney, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us today.
God bless you.